Welcome. And hello, Azrael Cat. I thought it might be a little early for you, but welcome anyway. On the phone here, we have Everett, who you've seen in the chat before. Want to introduce yourself?
Hello.
There we go.
Hi, I am Everett DePangher. I'm a lawyer in Arkansas, and for whatever reason, I think that the Book of Dunny is a very important topic for us to be focused on here.
It is. It's critically important in today's world. One of the most important things we could talk about is the Book of Dunny.
Mm-hmm.
And what I think might be happening in it when I get to starting it. But would you want to go over, we'll have some thoughts about the Myst series in general, like setting the baseline, for example, that there are only 4 games and not more than that.
Well,
for me, not for you. I know that's true.
Yeah, so maybe we should start with that. So obviously, yeah, you are what you just said, and but I think that this book is going to be where we I think really start seeing. And this is not to give anything away in particular, but this is one key part where we start seeing that transition we see the transition from the earlier Myst years, the golden years of Myst, to the later years, because I think this book is, and I mean, we can get into my opinion of it overall here, but I think that I would say Myst 3, Ages Beyond Myst, Myst 5 are parts of them are just completely incomprehensible without this book. And I think it has a big influence on Path of the Shell too. So there's a lot of things that you don't recognize that do come into play here. So there will be times where you may want to not participate in my comments, but we are getting into that territory where things we've ignored heretofore start showing up.
I mean, I guess this would be the point where I should probably consider digging into a more comprehensive understanding of everything that's in the ones that I don't recognize as actual text, because I really don't have as comprehensive an understanding of those as I do the ones that you've seen me play. Just enough to kind of have like the overview and enough to know that I was not interested in continuing with them. But I haven't, I haven't played through them or anything, so I don't perhaps have as good of an understanding, but perhaps I should wait until after I have read the book or something. But I do think that saying that there are parts that are incomprehensible about Myst 3 is not incorrect. I feel like when I was going through it on the channel that certainly there were times where those of you in chat who had read this book had a lot more information about what was going on in the game than I did. And so you'd be bringing stuff up and I'd be like, well, where am I supposed to get this information? From one of these tapestries? Oh, thanks for the follow. Twisted Transistor. Every time there's numbers in a name, it takes me a minute to decipher. But welcome and thank you. I feel like there was a lot of discussion that happened sort of around me when I was playing that, where it was like, okay, well, I haven't read that book, so I don't actually know what you're talking about, but I will assume that whatever you're saying is accurate. which might be a big assumption. I don't know, but yeah. I mean,
and one thing that's interesting about this is Myst 3 does spoil. I mean, it's not spoil because it's the sequel to this, but
right.
You pretty much know you pick up a lot of the, I guess you could say plot twists or things that will be unfolded here basically pretty quickly in Myst 3. Not in a way that you'll understand what they mean or how they tie into the rest of Myst 3 necessarily, but you can definitely skip ahead. If you're going through this book and you're not, and you want to skip ahead and just gotta find out the surprises,
right.
you can always just play Myst 3 because most of it's going to be there
in separate libraries and ages. Yeah. We're sorry, responding to the chat there. Welcome. We're uniting, although we will probably all have different opinions on some things. But I mean, I find it interesting that it is kind of a bridge toward Myst 3 because of the timing of when it came out. Because the 3 books were back to back year after year in 95, 96, and 97. And 97 was when Riven released. And it was years before Myst 3 came out. I mean, that was like, what, 2000 something, right?
Welcome, 2001. There is a gap there, yeah.
It's been almost 20 years since I read the books, but I fondly remember Miller's world building and cool sketches too. Well, the sketches in the first one were good. Can't say the same for the sketches in the second one. I mean, the artistry was good, but they were lacking something in the second one. Also lacking in frequency in the second book. Can't speak to the third yet because I'm going to go in blind on that one. But
we'll pay attention to illustrations. Because
are there more in Book of Denis than there were in Tiana?
It's going to be about the same as Tiana.
Oh, okay.
And it's going to be.
I feel like it was very front heavy in Tiana. It was like the first third had like all of the illustrations, and then there were just like none for the rest of the book. And I was like, where did they go? Where can they be found? Did you forget? Unpopular opinion from Wendy Kitten is Saavedra equals tsundere boyfriend material. I don't know if that's unpopular or not. I mean, he's the best character. He's like the reason for that game to exist. So the third game.
Well, welcome, Ms. Kitten. It's very good to see you here. I'm glad you could join us.
Illustrations are pretty hard to see on Kindle, so I feel I missed a lot in that regard. Oh yeah. Well, you didn't miss much in the second book, honestly. You missed unrelated illustrations that had nothing to do with anything most of the time, which was a shame because that wasn't true in the first book, which we did talk about a bit when I went through Tiana, was that it was like, well, why are they not? And it looks like it's maybe a different artist. I mean, I didn't see a credit for it like in the book, which is also a bit weird, but because I feel like it's just, do you not credit your artists when you're in that? I mean, maybe like it was a different time. I mean, I don't know, but but anyway, like back to the idea that it was years between. I mean, one thing that I expect, if we're talking predictions from me, is that there's going to be stuff that if you played the game first and then went back and read the book, despite the fact that the book came first, will feel like things got retconned. That there will be things that do not align with what the game depicts, because there's such a big gap in time, and because what was her name? Mary, right? Who wrote the third and fourth games? I can never remember her last name.
Yeah.
It's Mary something, I think.
I'm forgetting her name too. Yeah.
Well, the problem is I got in my head what her last name was, and it was wrong, and so now I just never trust what I think it would be. So, but I do remember that her first name was Mary, because she didn't write the book and they didn't write the game. I feel like there's got to be a disconnect there between what's in Book of Denis and what happens in Exile, because there's no way that you involve extra cooks in the kitchen and a big gap of time and things didn't change. And I feel like we have plenty of evidence at this point that this is probably going to sound extra harsh depending on your opinion of the Star Wars series, but that Rand Miller is a little bit of a George Lucas in that he has no trouble deciding that he was wrong before, or that he has a better idea now, and that this is always the way it was or should have been. This was always the intention, regardless of what you thought it was and what I thought it was years ago. It's, I feel like he's not maybe the most steady of lore masters for a series. So I don't know. I don't know that I feel that there will be consistency.
Yeah, well, certainly, and I mean, obviously, Rand Miller is a big, a big influential person for me, and I, will give him his due. But yeah, there's some George Lucas in him, particularly in the releasing the same product over and over with minor variations.
It just occurs to me, the remakes of Myst and Riven, the ones that came out last, God, was it 2 years ago now for Riven? That in that they replace, because they wanted to set it up for VR, they replaced all of the FMV, all of the video with 3D models that look like garbage. That's exactly like the special edition Star Wars. They took away the puppets and replaced it with terrible CG. It's exactly the same thing. I had not really compared him in my mind to George Lucas until today, but now that I've done it, it feels pretty accurate, actually. But yeah, the same thing with re-releasing the same products. Sometimes relatively major changes. I mean, Riven was a pretty significant change, which I felt was good because it gave it playability. If you even if you've memorized Riven 97, you can go ahead and play Riven 2024. Welcome, Young Fox. We're talking Myst.
It is nice. I mean, whatever one's opinion of which version of Riven is better, it is nice that they actually did something new and different when they were releasing a product. I think the extent to which they would torture themselves to come up with anything to market the various versions of Myst 1, got kind of unbelievable. I think
that was a little complicated too, because some of that was sort of, it began as more of a fan initiative, and then was given a blessing and was less of a planned corporate type of thing. But
the Riven
was originally like a fan initiative.
Yeah, through the Starry Expanse project.
Yeah, I don't really know much about its development. I just know that the reason that there's 47 versions of Myst has something to do with the fact that people kept updating it and modding it, and then some things got kind of absorbed as official. And some were official, and it's kind of a mess when you're talking about the Myst editions. But
I think my favorite. I mean, there are a few pretty low points, but I think my favorite low point was when they released a patch to Real Myst Masterpiece Edition. So this was maybe 2015, 2016, and the patch listed as one of the new features that you can now sit on the beds in.
Oh my God, I remember doing that when I played it. Like by accident. Like I clicked on the bed or whatever, and it was just like I sat on the bed and I'm like, why can you do this? This doesn't, like, why? Could you do this in the original one? I don't remember. I believe was basically what I said when I was playing it. That I didn't realize that was a late patch to the thing, but that's funny actually. I hadn't realized.
Yeah. And there's the cycling through of, I mean, there's also the George Lucas like adding and then removing the same thing in versions. And I think probably for me the most infamous example of that was when they added, I think the sequence was the first release of Real Myst Masterpiece Edition added the day-night cycle to Mechanical Age, which was just, but which was basically just night. It was just darkness outside. So it was just miserable playing for periods of time. So then they added a patch where they added exterior lighting to the rotating fortress,
right,
so that it would be somewhat more illuminated outside. And then in Myst 2021, they removed all of that and removed the day-night cycle completely, and then just went back to daytime Mechanical Age.
Yeah, I mean, I think, God, it is a bit. Why didn't I think of it as George Lucas scene before? It is very that. Although George Lucas doesn't tend to go back on things like that, but he also doesn't have people like playtesting his stuff. So I guess there was probably feedback where people were like, "I can't see anything. Come on now." Sure, day night, great, whatever. I can't see, so that doesn't work. Is sort of a different thing from people just being like, "Why did you mess with Star Wars? Like, what's wrong with you?" Like, I feel like that when it's something where physically your audience can't interact with your product anymore, you do kind of have to listen a little bit more. So I
can look it up. There are instances of Star Wars films adding and then deleting something, but anyway, we don't have to focus on that. We're on a tangent.
We could definitely get on a tangent about that, but so I mean, I don't really. Well, okay, I guess I have to figure that the reason that they would have continued making games after 4 was money or pressure for more from somebody, because it really felt like they wrapped up the story there, which is why I kind of just like, that is the last one that has a reason to exist, and the reason is Haven. The reason really isn't anything else. It's certainly not Spire. I mean, we've talked about that. Oh my God, the unrepentant psychopath who designed Spire. There's a special little room in hell that is specifically for him, and I hated that. And it also, like, Spire, it's weird because that's the one you can't skip, but that one really doesn't offer you anything story-wise compared to Haven. It's basically that, hey, Cirrus is also an unrepentant psycho. The end. I don't really know why that was. Anyway, Haven, and the fact that it wraps up the story in what I feel like is a nice little bow, because, like, yeah, is the Yisha stuff kind of unresolved? Sure. But at the same time, it, like, the main story has been about Atris being a terrible father to his 2 sons and completely ignoring them. And it wraps up that arc, I feel like, nicely. And so the idea that you would then want to continue and make more. I don't know if it feels like it was a sort of an artistic thing, the thing where like as an artist you just kind of can't stop making art, or if it was financial pressure or what it was, but what I don't know is if in this book there's going to be any indication that there was more story in mind and that it wasn't just something that got spun out later to fill space in future games. Welcome back, Ezreal, by the way. But
well, I guess this is also a good place to point out. This is the first. The Book of Dunny is going to be the first. How do we say it? It is the first part of the series that Robin was not involved in and would never be involved in again in the future. Right. This is the first fully post Robin.
Well, okay. It depends on whether you're talking about like story writing or just when something came out, because Riven did come out the same year that this book came out. However, Robin did not participate, supposedly. I mean, we don't know, because Robin still could be semicolon guy. I've realized I need to explain that to the new audience. Robin was not officially Robin was not officially involved in Book of Tiana either. Perhaps to its detriment.
Right. Well, but what I mean is, he's not involved in that. Then Riven comes out.
Right.
So this is the first fully post that we are now in the beginning of the era in which Robin is completely gone.
Yeah.
Right. He's gone now. He won't be coming back in the future.
Right, because he was working on Riven when Tiana was being written. I believe that's alluded to in the foreword to that one, which is like he's working on another project for the Myst world, but it's not the book.
Yeah, there is something to that effect there. The extent to which that's
I find it hard to believe that
statement.
Yeah, I mean, I find it hard to believe that it. Like, what, did they just never talk to each other ever again? I mean, like, his ideas surely are somehow still influencing how things go to some extent. I mean, I don't know their relationship. I mean, maybe they did just stop talking to each other for all I know. But, it seems like the discussions and things that they would have talked about beforehand, like, surely his ideas influenced things. God help us all if Robin was indeed semicolon guy, because imagine a world in which Robin continued to be part of it in that case. Because, all right, let me explain semicolon guy real quick, since I've brought him up now a couple of times. So for those of you who were not with me when I read through Book of Atris and Book of Tiana and discussed them on this channel, in Book of Atris, I noticed something very specific. I do not have a high opinion of the writing of these books. Having read many books in my time, I do not have a high opinion of these. However, they have done a great service to humanity and all writers, in that my standard for writing is now very low. But there were passages in Book of Atris that were suddenly better, where the language was more descriptive, there was more emotion in it, it was more fully realized character moments. They stood out as particularly better, like actual good writing. And one thing that I noticed is semicolons are not something that people use a lot. Most people, I would venture to say, don't know where to use them properly, and so therefore, like me, they avoid using them. But I noticed when I was quoting out these passages that I thought were particularly good, the vast majority of them had a semicolon in them. So I started to dub the person who wrote these sections who seemed to be somebody different, because it did stand out from the rest of the writing. It didn't feel like the rest of the writing. I dubbed this person Semicolon Guy. We don't know for sure who Semicolon Guy was. What we do know is that there were far fewer passages like it in the second book. Robin was not involved in the second book. And so Robin is like suspect number one. But we don't know, and I don't have any proof that those passages were not written by David Wingrove or Rand Miller. However, having read the second book, I'm going to say I highly doubt that they were. They were moments of illuminated inspiration from them, if indeed it was written by either of those men. Because the second book definitely could have used some Semicolon Guy who may have been somebody. The secondary suspect is somebody's wife, because some women were credited in the forward for the first book who did not show up in the second book's forward. And I do have to say that some of the better Semicolon Guy passages were about Katran, who I call her actual name and not the name given to her by Atris. And she just gave up correcting him. But yeah, so that's Semicolon Guy. Semicolon Guy was particularly better at writing and showed up in book one and has not been seen since. There were a few semicolons in the second book, to be fair, and a few decent passages that did not have semicolons. So David Wingrove and Rand Miller are not incapable of writing decent passages. They just mostly did. And they also don't know rocks. I'm just going to put that one out there right now. We're not going to go into the dissertation. But they don't know rocks. So maybe don't write about rocks if you don't know the difference between chalcedony and amethyst. If you missed the 4-hour discussion about that the day that came up, either consider yourselves lucky or be sorry that you missed it. I don't know. That would depend on your personal opinion on whether mineralogy is interesting to you, I guess.
I would encourage people to, if they ever want to look into it, yes. You do have some, I thought you had some very insightful thoughts about the geology, the technical geology stuff in the book.
I mean, in the basic sense, a lot of the sort of broad strokes of the geology of Book of Tiana were accurate. But then whenever they got to anything specific, at that point it becomes like, okay, so you understand what kind of stuff would be around a caldera, which is what the where they were living. It's like the technical term. Apparently, it's like an old mineralogy deep dive you're sold, Wendy. It was a long discussion about how Atris has grown up around rocks, is part of the guild that deals with rocks, and does not know the difference between a piece of chalcedony and a piece of amethyst. And to be fair, 25 years old for a Denis person you're still a child, basically. So I should probably judge him differently, but that's still 25 human years you had to learn things. So that's a problem. I struggle with that one, because it's like he literally lives and breathes rocks. How do you anyway? But Ms. Kitten, we have on this channel. This channel has seen some very detailed discussion of minerals. He's being kind.
There's some, if that's of interest to you, there's been some good stuff here.
I don't expect, that is one thing I don't expect to see in the third book as nearly as much, because we're no longer dealing with underground. We're dealing with our great protagonist, grandson Atris, the worst father in the world, Not technically. I mean, it again was really bad, but like, man, the most ignorant father in the world. Can we give him that title? I mean, like, because he's just, it's not like Game Atris does it maliciously. Like, nothing that he did was malicious. But it's not like he was trying to abuse his kids or purposely ignoring his kids or anything. It's just he's oblivious. Again, these are like the most autistic coded books that I think I've ever read. Because like literally every character really kind of fits some of the criteria. And certainly Atris does. Him and both Atrises, honestly. God, this is so much harder when you're talking it and then reading it because you can't have a different spelling. Because if you don't know, Game Atris in the Myst games, he's named for his grandfather, whose name was also Atris. And in the Denis language, it is spelled the same. But when they write it out in English for us in the books, they add an I to the grandfather just so that it's distinguishable. But it's said the same. So that makes it pretty difficult when we're discussing it to be like, okay, Atris, which one? Isn't the one with the I the one without the I? So I try to remember to be like Grandpa Atris or Grandson Atris or Game Atris, like to distinguish who we're talking about. But it does get a little confusing when you're discussing the books, particularly now that Grandson Atris is going to show up. So it's going to be a little bit of a challenge for us. And not an unnavigable challenge, but it's a little bit of a challenge because just audibly it's not different. I expect that he will show up in some sense, at least. It does not look like it's mostly about them, but I feel like at least ancillary, he's got to be in there somehow. Because, yeah, I mean, you want like a general prediction.
Atris the second?
Yeah, Atris the second would show up somehow. Yeah. Because they're gonna want to do the like tie-in, almost fan service thing. Surely they're going to do that, whether he's a main character or not.
So your guess is that he is something more of a cameo type role.
Well, he certainly doesn't appear in the blurb as like the biggest thing. I mean, they, of course, okay, I need to maybe restructure my prediction because if I were writing the back, I'm going to read the blurb, the back of the, and I mean, since you apparently have an additional paragraph on yours, I suppose you can continue it for me, but
let's talk about the jacket blurb here.
So what I have for mine, because the edition that I'm working with is the Myst Reader. So it's all 3 books published together in one volume. So it does have blurbs for each of the 3 on the back, but apparently it's slightly shorter. So this is what I have for the book. These pages are your link to the story of, we're going to have to decide how to pronounce these. I might go with Aedra, but they probably don't. They probably go Aedra. Because they never do the vowels the way that I think they should. Son of Jetha Rojetha, Lord of Tyranny. God, I can't make myself say Aedra. Okay, I'll do it. Aedra's ethereal homeland. Atris sets out to rebuild Denis and stumbles into this world of spectacular waterfalls, lush fields, rich music, and astonishingly beautiful architecture. Everything is perfect, but when a boy gets sick, only a prophecy and some fate can shape Tyranny's destiny. So if I were writing that, to me that would mean that Aedra was the main character in this book. But I do have to remember who the authors are. I have to remember that. I need to remember to, having taken a break for the holidays and everything, maybe need to get back in the mindset of who's writing this. So it is probably Atris, the main character, although I would have written the back of the book blurb differently had that been the case. But because I wouldn't have started it with this is the story of another guy if it was not going to be that's your main character. However, they do also jump around perspectives a lot in these. They don't handle it well, but they do it a lot. Yeah. So, I mean, we will probably get POV Atris and POV Aedra both, as well as probably somebody else. but I don't know. I mean, maybe it probably is that he's the main character, and I wouldn't have written the back that way. But what else do you have? What's the additional stuff that you have for your hardcover?
So it's interesting. The paragraph you write, it's actually slightly condensed from what I have.
Oh.
So, Rick, didn't you say yours? The sentence was everything is perfect. Period.
Well, it's everything is perfect, but when a boy gets sick, only a prophecy and some fate can shape Tyranny's destiny. That's the last.
So that's combined as a sentence.
Yeah.
Okay. For mine, it's everything is perfect, comma, this is a world they could scarcely imagine, period, capital but, when a boy. So anyway, so it's a little compressed, but the the top part, I have the first paragraph that says the ages of Myst are worlds of adventure and awe and mystery and beauty and intrigue and betrayal.
That is actually at right? I do. It's at the top of, it's before all three paragraphs. I kind of assumed that was only there on the Myst Reader because it's talking about all of them, but I guess it would apply equally easily to the back of any of them.
Yeah, and maybe it is on the back of all. I don't have the other two volumes. I should probably bring the other two.
Well, mine's going to be different though, because let me read you that paragraph because it does specifically reference this edition. The ages of Myst are worlds of adventure and awe, of mystery and beauty, of intrigue and betrayal. I will also note, we're breaking down the blurb. Yes, Morris. Well, we're talking predictions. We got to his blurb is different from my blurb. There are two semicolons in that sentence, by the way. Come take a step into the full fictional legend and origins of Myst. Now, for the first time, the 3 volumes that make up the Myst canon are available as one. I mean, that's not the whole canon, but all right. You will travel to wonderful new ages, semicolon. You will watch as the unimaginable comes to pass, semicolon. And you will read a story that until recently has been kept secret for thousands of years. I feel like a fan of Semicolon Guy wrote the back of the book blurb for that. But it like specifically is about the 3 volumes in one, so it can't be exactly the same thing that you have on yours.
Mine is a little different. I mean, it mentions Catherine Atris and Tiana. Okay. But then the big difference is
no Richard Watson, not real Myst kid.
Yeah, Richard Watson. So I'm sure Richard Watson. Yeah, I think Richard Watson. He will not appear on the back of the book. So he will be appearing in the credits.
Yeah,
I'm sure.
Yeah, well, I think he's credited in the forwards of all 3 of them. I can check.
Yeah. I acknowledge there he is. Yeah. And we'll, but yeah. Oh yeah. So yeah.
Yeah, Richard Watson is in the acknowledgements for book 1 for sure. So I'm pretty sure he shows up again.
But then the final paragraph on the back, and I have just so we're all clear. I have the I have the original print, the 1997 edition, and then I also have the ebook for. I also have the ebook, but we will probably want to talk about that one separately. But so then the final paragraph here says, "Myst, the Book of Dunny." And there's a typo. Well, it's actually
I love that.
It's D. Well, actually, maybe it's no, because it's D apostrophe capital N-I.
They never spell it that way, though.
Yeah, and it's also that way in the preceding paragraph. So maybe
well, you know what it is somebody not them wrote the back of the book. Also, Moritz has spent 450 of the channel points to say Richard Watson is a hack.
Oh dear. But anyway, so I guess arguably that's not a typo. That's a stylistic choice, I guess.
Yeah, I mean, it's not spelled wrong. It's just it's a non-canonical stylizing of it. They just don't do it that way usually. So, but probably like an editor or somebody put that on there.
And then, I'd be curious if anyone in the chat has a particular reaction to this. It goes on to say that the book is a tale of one man against a powerful legacy of integrity against corruption and of love and valor. It is a story that has been kept secret for thousands of years, and with good reason, for you will watch as the unthinkable comes to light, and only one man's life and vision is the key to salvation and absorption.
The one man is Dr. Watson, says Moritz. He's the worst thing to happen to Myst canon, and that includes the writer of Myst 4. Let's not slander Mary in the same sentence here. Okay. let's not throw her into this fire. That the blurb on the back of yours gives a very different impression to mine.
Well, it continues to elevate this one man.
Yeah, it's like really setting up sort of a. I mean, it almost feels like they're trying to set up like a Christ-like figure here. Like, it's salvation. It's the only one man can save the universe. I'm so glad Dr. Watson was able to save the Paro, the true hero.
It definitely is borrowing some Christian God the Son language there.
Yeah.
But the question, and this is where I wonder what the chat thinks, is when it refers to one man. It says twice, right? It is the tale of one man, and then goes on to say only one man's life and vision. Is it referring to Idra or to Atris?
Oh, come on. You know who they mean. Like, there's no way they don't mean Atris. There's no way
you're thinking it.
Okay, I put to you. My evidence is Myst 3. Okay, Moritz says, if Atris is Christ, then Gen is God. Hashtag Gen did nothing wrong. Gen did a lot of things wrong, but he is still right about the art being creation. I stand there and have not moved. But like, if you think about what we learn in Myst 3 about what Atris is doing, that this idiot who never learned the art correctly, who learned from a guy who already didn't learn it correctly, right? That he is the savior of the remnants of Denis, right? For reasons that are incomprehensible when you try to look at it logically. Like, there are literal guild masters in the survivors, and Atris is going to be the one who does this? Like, what? It makes no sense. But they basically set him up as that figure in Myst 3, that he is this blessed savior of Denis for no good reason except plot convenience? Question mark? Or hubris. I mean, like, from an outside perspective, it feels like he must have set himself up as the savior, because like, why would the survivors choose him? He is not a good choice. Like, if there was a vote, he wouldn't win. There's no way. Unless they're all just tired and they don't care and they don't really want help. And so he's just like, I'm gonna write you an age, and they're like, whatever, kid. Like, that's the only thing I can think for that. But like, they already set him up as that figure. So despite the fact that the back of my book says that it is a story of Idra, I don't think it's the story of Idra. Like, given yours, I don't think that it's referring to him. I think it's referring to Atris, because they've definitely put him in that role before. the real hero is Rinaref, him and his weird ass tree cults. Well, I suppose if he hadn't started everything, then we wouldn't be here. So I guess we'll call him a real hero. But it's if we're talking Christ-like language, I'm really struggling to believe that it would be about anybody but Atreus, because they've already put him in that position. I mean, granted, that was several years later, and technically Mary wrote it, but it feels like if they were gonna set it up, it's like more likely to be him. The only way that I could see, okay, so if we're talking predictions, the only way that I could see it not referring to Atreus, but referring to Idra instead, is if in this story, Idra dies, and so the mantle is passed to Atreus, and that's where his sort of, savior god-like arc begins. I could see that potentially, but Atreus is very plot favored. I would say he's a Mary Sue. I mean, all of the main characters in Book of Tiana definitely also were. They're all the best at what they do for no reason. Except for arguably Grandpa Atreus, who clearly isn't good at geology, but and like Anna just has this magical power to make everybody like her all of a sudden when they talk to her. Very Mary Sue stuff. There's a lot of precedent for that in the writing, that you have essentially fanfic level plot convenience and plot armor for everybody. So it's not unreasonable to me to give that to Atreus, which, it sounds grandiose, but if you read his journals in Myst 3, he's talking pretty grandiose about his plans. He's going a little bit Gen in Myst 3. I'm legitimately uncomfortable with Myst 3 Atreus, because I feel like he's getting a little bit into the idea that he's a godlike savior figure in that.
And it has been a little while since I've read Atreus's mystery journal.
It's been a little while for me too. But
I think at least in his defense, that I think he does at least one point. I think he acknowledges in that journal, "Oh, wow, I'm starting to behave like my father." But then he also, there's some language in there, as I recall, that's somewhat tempering of this role that Denny have given him as being the writer of their home age.
I still legitimately cannot imagine them actually giving him that role. I think he just took it. There's no way. Any of the survivors, whether they were in the Writers Guild or not, any of them know more than he knows. There's no way that they would just be like, we nominate you, who has he's a quarter Denis. There's no way.
Yes. Yeah, he's a quarter Denis.
There's just no way. They're not picking him. We know how racist they are. Just on the basis of the fact that he's only a quarter Denis by blood, we spent an entire book learning about how racist this culture was. I'm really struggling to believe that in any universe they go, yeah, this is going to be the guy. This is the guy. He's gonna save our people.
Some of us would say specious, but I know you have specific reasons for saying
I do.
racist.
I do. Yeah.
Yeah.
They're biology reasons. I feel like they're pretty good, actually. Because I don't think that And here's the thing. I understand. I get it. I understand that other people don't care about the biology of the likelihood of these groups of people being able to have babies together. It is fantasy.
Mhm.
I get that you're probably not really supposed to care, but I feel like they brought it up. I feel like that might have been their big mistake. I think I could have let it go if it weren't for the idea that, like, they made a big deal about there being the ability for Gen to exist, right? And I know that before I even read it, I was already in on this, but I feel like it justifies me digging into the biology of things when they go, yeah, let's bring up the biology of how this wouldn't be supposed to work, right? But it worked anyway. And it's like, yeah, because you're all the same species. You're just different varieties of the same species. You all look the same. Have you not noticed this? And I get it. I mean, it's a very Star Trek alien problem. Like, when you're doing it as FMV and you're doing this on like a shoestring budget, like, you can't make them look all that different because it's not like you can do Hollywood effects and things like that. So they're all going to look human. I get it from a practical meta perspective, sure. But to be clear, for those who are new, I have made many arguments on this channel to the point of tiring everybody out with it about how all of these quote unquote species, the humans, the Dini, Rivenese people, I always blank on what Kata's
the
Ahmad. They're not different species. They are different varieties. Like, clearly there are differences, but just the way that, like, a Great Dane and a Chihuahua are dogs. And they're just different variety. Like, that's my feeling, because they can all intermingle and have children, and it doesn't appear to be a problem. And I would argue, actually, I know that you said at one point, I'm gonna bring this one up, digging up old things from the past, but you did say at one point, I believe, something about how it was hard for Gen growing up, that he had physical problems. I don't think that anything that was described was bad enough to suggest that it has anything to do with the fact that there's an incompatibility between Dini and humans. I was almost as sick as an infant. And I'm not two species in real life.
Yeah, and I mean, on that particular issue, yes, I do agree that I agree that there are the story did not sufficiently develop what his developmental problems were. And
I love how carefully
it culminates in that weird. Yeah, and it culminates in that weird scene where Atris just takes him.
Yeah, it just takes him off to.
It takes him outside.
Yeah, he takes him to Gemida and takes him outside.
Yeah,
and then suddenly he's cured. Why? Who knows? Yeah. I think the implication there was that because he's half human, he needed sunlight, but they don't explain that. Like, you could, but they didn't. Which kind of just goes back to writing. But
yeah, and then he proceeds to live in the cavern.
Yeah, for the rest of his life.
On and off, he died. Yeah, I mean, he visits other ages just like everyone else does.
I mean, everybody does that, though. He's not unusual physically. I mean, he's bullied. And I feel bad about that, but, like, at the same time, he turned into a monster. It's like, you don't need to become evil. But that was one thing. I do wish they had spent more time with young Gen in Book of Tiana, because I felt like this is what we were here for. Or what, like, if you were if let's say, I mean, it came out the year before Riven, right?
Yeah.
And I feel like even not knowing that Riven was going to be about him, if you were a fan already at the time, surely you're more interested in the immediate family than you are the grandparents. Personally, I feel like, and I feel like his story could have been so much more interesting.
Sure.
I mean, let's be real, all of their stories could have been so much more interesting. Although I will give them one thing. There's one thing that I have to give Book of Tiana, and I have to give them creatively, is that although Viovis is transcendently asinine, as you said.
Yeah.
The plot that Agaris, because I really think it was his plot and not Viovis's plot, but the way that they take Denis down is devious and very, very cruel, and absolutely takes advantage of the architecture of the place. And it's kind of genius. I mean, it's evil genius, but it's kind of genius. And that, I got to give them that. That was clever.
I have just started an ad break for what it's worth.
Yeah, you're right. Yeah, ad. Okay. That's fair.
Mine's now just ended.
Okay. Well, supposedly people could still have it for another 2.5 minutes, but who knows? But yeah, I mean, like, I don't think they knew where the focus of their story was. So perhaps I should apply that to my thoughts about what will happen in Book of Denis. Mm-hmm. But I think that also speaks to my interpretation of the blurb.
Well, and would this be a good time? Oh, I just wanted to say, and also I don't think that's anything to your comments. I would just add, I wouldn't take away anything from Collis and Tessera. Is that her name?
His mother, Tessera. Yeah, that.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah, so I thought they were fine characters. I'm glad they're
fine characters. I wish we had more though of them. There was a lot of like ridiculous time in that book that could have been spent developing, say, Collis and Tessera. I mean, Collis, I'm way more interested in him than I am in Grandpa Atris, because he had, like, they so quietly in the background, he had so much power that we never knew about. He was so high up in society, and they never explained that. They didn't explain, like, how did he get here? Like, what is his actual role? And then it's like only when you get to the very, very end, and it's like, oh yeah, all the guild masters went here. You never even told us he was the guild master. Like, what are you doing? It becomes a thing where it's like, he's almost more intriguing by his absence, I guess, but they could have developed this. And I think the fact that he was so high up probably could have been utilized and leveraged to make some of the trials and tribulations of the story more interesting. But they did leave a lot of stuff just sort of sitting on the table, I feel like, where it was just available, story that could have happened and didn't. But I do also feel like that is a chronic problem of theirs, that they express ideas that are sort of the start of something that would have been really interesting, and then they don't actually write that part. They write the part about how they made breakfast like they did every other day or something. It was something really boring and normal, while they just sort of leave this other thing on the table where it's like, oh yeah, so Gen's childhood was awful. Skip ahead 8 years, and now he's basically the valedictorian of his elementary school class. So what happened in the meantime? We don't know. The time skips were disorienting. Well, I hope they don't continue that in Book of Denis, but I would guess they do.
and I think you're on that. You're particularly correct that it's not. It is odd that the book does kind of skip over what seems to be an end to the bullying.
Yeah.
Without an explanation for why it ended.
No, there's nothing. It's just like, yeah, now he's fine, and his earlier childhood sucked, but now he's like top of his class, so everything's cool. Mm-hmm. How? Why? Did a teacher intervene? Yeah. Did he beat up his fellow students or something? Like, violence is unheard of in the Denis world, so surely he wasn't getting into fistfights or anything. But like what? How did he get out of that? You know, they're not old enough to have grown out of it. They're still children, especially by Denis standards with the longer lives. Although we don't know how their calendar is. They might actually have very similar lifespans, but just count the years shorter.
No, we've gone over all of that.
I know we've gone over all of that, but it just it still bothers me. But the biology will always bother me. But I mostly I accept that it's just mostly I do actually just accept that it's fantasy. But then I get those little thoughts in my mind, and it just bugs me a little bit. But they surely they don't have a reason. Can't a guy just become cool? He got a hot guy haircut. Yeah. I mean, if they ever described what people looked like in these books, then we might know if there was such a thing as a cool guy haircut in Denis, but we don't, because they very rarely describe any physical features of any person, which I find very interesting once I notice that. You will occasionally get like a hair color. Like we found out that Anna's hair was red at the beginning of Tiana, but that then heard nothing else about it. They very, very vaguely describe what Denis people look like, that they, are sort of colorless in general, like you would kind of think of a cave dweller being, and with long faces, but we don't really have an idea of what that means per se. Like, are they super unusually long, or is it just like a sort of, they all have what we would consider just kind of human long faces? Like, we don't really know, because they really don't describe that. And they also very rarely describe clothing either, which I found interesting, but also weirdly relatable to the way that my brain works. Because I probably wouldn't describe what somebody's face looks like. I might describe an expression, but probably know what their face looks like, because for those who are new, I do have a relatively mild version of prosopagnosia. It's face blindness. You have trouble remembering people's faces, recognizing somebody's face, things like that. Like if I see somebody out of context, I'm like, I don't know who you are. Please inform me. Like seeing a work colleague at the grocery store is terribly confusing for me, because that's somebody who goes like, hey, and greets you like they know you. And I'm like, you're a stranger. I don't know who you are. But clearly you know me. So now I'm in a really bad position. So I probably wouldn't describe faces either. But the fact that they don't, I find interesting, especially since more than one person was writing this. And that they don't describe any of the clothing when you're world building and you're trying to tell us what Denis is like, and you don't tell us what they wear, because we really don't get very much. We get a little bit. I mean, we know that guildsmen, that there are guild robes, sure, and that colors designate different guilds, and then it's never brought up again. We don't know if they wear that every day or if that's a special occasion. Like, we literally don't know, because they don't tell us.
Yeah, that's a fair point. And also, by the time we get to Riven, there is a clothing. I mean, and obviously that's a more visual medium, but
right. I mean, they don't have a choice there.
We immediately start off with Cho in his dunny, wearing dunny clothing.
Right.
And that's one of the first things we see.
Yeah. Yeah.
And all of its dorkiness. It's just there's there.
Look, I love the video bits. That was the big disappointment of Riven 2024 for me, because the 3D models will never be what the video was. I get why they did it, but it really loses something. I mean, as over the top as it sometimes is, or as underdone as it sometimes is, really depending on who you're talking about. Because one could argue that Rand underacts a little bit sometimes. God, the accent is something. It's like he wants it to be a little different, but doesn't really have a vision of how. Like, there's no specific thing he's shooting for, which is why I always struggle when I'm reading these and when I'm talking about them. Like, if I were just reading them straight up silently to myself, it'll be fine. But when I'm talking about these things and I come across these names and titles and things, like Idra, trying to guess how it's intended to be pronounced is like a minefield to me, because they don't have a consistent vowel system. Americans tend to default to different A and E sounds, for example, than like Europeans would, and a lot of other languages other than English do. So, like, when I look at this, I want to, because it's sort of foreign, I guess. I don't know what that says about me, but there you go. When I look at Idra, I want to say Aedra, like make it a different E sound, but I feel like they would intend for it to be Idra, but then occasionally they'll put in like a more British sort of sound somewhere for an A or things like that, and it's like, well, I don't know what you mean now. It could be anything. Like Savedro, they say Savedro, and I'm like, that's wrong. To my brain.
I'm going to go ahead and say that I'm going to say Idra.
Yeah, I think that's what they mean for it to be. I understand I'm probably going to struggle with that a little bit sometimes, but I mean, now what about
there
this?
There is no official.
Well, yeah, I mean, I don't think yeah.
No,
there's two H's. There's two H's. So I want it to be like Jethye or like Jethye or something like that, because I feel like you need to somehow address the fact that you have two H's.
And and I don't. I'm not sure what to make, of that one. And this is where we get into and I invited a friend of mine who maybe she may participate at some point in one of these sessions, but who has coined the term apostrophe porn for this sort of thing, and because it's just like they're not. Jeffa, if it's Jeffa wrote Jeffa, but I just don't know what.
But how do you address the
doing there?
I personally, and they certainly don't treat it this way. In spoken dialogue, I mean, based a lot on the way that they say Dani, like that, I don't feel like that's how you should pronounce how it's written. Because generally speaking, at least when we're writing it out in English, and I don't mean this for like apostrophe S for like it's or anything like that, but like the apostrophe in things like this often indicate like a glottal stop. So it's like a little, so like how I say it, didn't like I exaggerated it, but you have like, there's like a little pause there almost where you kind of swallow the next sound a little bit. But then how you address it when you have the double H where it's Jethhe, which you almost, I anyway, almost instinctively put a little glottal stop in with like Jethhe, right? So there's like a little hey, like there's a little stop in there before that, but there's no apostrophe. And then in his surname, then there's Ro Jethhe. So there should be like an apostrophe there should be a little bit more of a stop, but it's harder to do in that than it is just in the name Jethy in the first place. So apostrophe porn is not inaccurate. It is something that they use apostrophes a lot, but they don't seem to know what they actually do to pronunciation of any of the things that they do based on what they say when they're acting. So it's hard to know what they want, but it's like they bought apostrophes on discount and just had to use them all or something. Like it becomes a little crazy.
And it doesn't help because clearly this is a transliteration.
Yeah.
That we don't
know what it looks like in
English. We don't use apostrophes much in English that way.
Yeah, we don't.
And so just to pile it on, like, is there a more true way to do the transliteration?
Well, we will never know because
that's where the apostrophe form is. Kind of come from it because it's we're doing an potentially inferior transliteration just so we can stare at apostrophes.
It's so that it looks foreign.
Yeah.
It's like how, you might spell something like we're bringing Star Wars back into it, but like Kashyyyk, the Wookiee planet, like, did it need all those Y's? It didn't. It really didn't, but it looks more exotic because it has extra Y's in it. Like, it's not pronunciation wise, we don't really give it any special treatment for having Y's in, but when you're looking at it, and I mean, it's obviously, it's like, okay, to distinguish, but I was thinking a little bit just now about how it's interesting that they do things like Anna's Denis name is Tiana, like with the apostrophe in it. But there are many, 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 many Denis people that we meet that do not have an apostrophe name. Atris among them.
Right.
There's Atris, Viovis, Collis, Tessera, none of them. Nobody in the family or like anybody, like Agaris, I think, is probably the most prominent character in that book that has an apostrophe name. I mean, there are a couple of people that we meet here and there that are, like on the council or whatever, but he is probably the most, pretty much everybody else, they're not. And so it's like, if you're trying to make her name look Denis, we actually have more evidence that they don't use apostrophes than that they do. But you wanted to make it look different and exotic compared to how her, human name looks. So you had to put one in for her, but it is actually more unusual to have one in the experience that they actually give us.
And it is true in the Dunny alphabet does have an apostrophe.
I couldn't remember off the top of my head. I know they have like different characters for all the different ways you could say the A sound.
Yeah. So some of it, some of it is coming. If we're talking just about Dunny names, which Rojefa is not Dunny,
right?
From just
which makes it even more interesting that it has an apostrophe, doesn't it?
It just means that the apostrophes are multiplying and spreading across the ages,
but not the semicolons, probably.
Yeah.
Sadness. One of my other predictions is I do not expect a semicolon guy to show up again, since semicolon guy abandoned us for the second book. The semicolon guy is probably not returning in the third book either, to the detriment, I'm sure. But maybe look, they always come up with some good passages regardless. It's just the majority of the book is my standards. They've destroyed them.
So before would this be a good time for your predictions?
Yeah, that would probably be a good time for my predictions. Okay, so prediction number 1. This is not the story of Idra. This is the story of Atris. That's like primary prediction above all other predictions. We will hear about Idra. I'm sure we will even see things from Idra's perspective. But it's not his story, regardless of what the blurb says at the beginning. It's going to be Idris' story because Idris is the self-insert kind of Mary Sue character, so he's going to be the one. Although Idra is also, we'll add a asterisk prediction onto that Idra is probably also going to have Mary Sue characteristics in that whatever he's good at, we're not going to get an explanation as to why. He's just going to be naturally incredibly good at whatever it is. Because they love to do that, where it's like, did they learn a skill? We don't think so, but they're the best at it. Except when they're not. Viovis, example number one. I think there's going to be another, like my other like biggest overarching prediction is that there's going to be a fair amount of stuff that does feel like it conflicts with later content. Because it is so much earlier, and it's written by Rand and David and not by Mary, who took the next two games as being the writer. And I know Rand was involved in those, but he wasn't technically the writer. So that's going to change things. He also, it wasn't developed, the 3 and 4 were not developed by Cyan either. So like it's going to change how the story seems later on, right? So this early vision of what they're doing with the world and the people is probably different. So I feel like there will be conflict. How much, I'm not sure. I mean, I don't think it's like going to make Myst 3 seem like a complete retcon, but I can't imagine that there aren't going to be things that are directly contradicted by the text later. Because I like, just from a perspective of how they're doing this and the timing, it seems it just seems impossible for that to be consistent completely. That would take, and this isn't even like a ding on them or anything. It's just, it's the creative project process. I can't imagine that anybody without intense amounts of planning that are like superhuman, as far as I'm concerned, could keep it consistent under these conditions. Especially when another company is taking control of development of the next chapter, essentially. I really don't see how you could manage. So it's not like I'm saying it's necessarily anything they did wrong at any point. It's just, I don't think it will seamlessly fit into the timeline. I also think that it will probably retcon some things that happened in the earlier books, because we do have precedent for this. Like the story of the fall of Denis, the way that it was told originally is completely different from what actually happened. Now, I happen to think that what they actually ended up doing for it, while incredibly evil, was also incredibly genius. And a completely different story from what they told us it was going to be. There was nothing about the lower classes uprising. Like, that had nothing to do with it. That may have been happening off screen, but we don't know. And neither did Gen, and that's kind of the point. But I think that there will be retconning but you can't really call it retroactive continuity problems if it's going to be the next stuff that disagrees with it. But there will be both foreconning and retroconning. Like it's I think going to go both directions in that sense.
Well, yeah, and you have this interesting position. You know what came before, and you know what came after, and you are now reading something.
I mean, I can't. I cannot read it from the perspective of somebody who read it when it came out, because I do know what comes after, and so I can't remove this knowledge from my brain. I think the other thing is, at the time that it was written, it wouldn't have been a thing where they would have been worried about that. Like, they wouldn't expect. There's no way that they expected anybody to be sitting here, like, doing a live stream podcast, breaking down every sentence of their book later, like years later. They can't anticipate that. So they weren't worried about contradicting themselves later, because they just figured, well, people will forget. It's fine. Like, who's going to go back and look at the book later? Like, it's not, we don't need to worry about it. Much the way that, like,
I think by that point they had tremendous commercial success with Myst 1. They knew that this was a big deal.
Sure, but that's different from like the internet was new, right? And there weren't sort of these like centralized fan groups quite the same way. And I feel like it's sort of, filmmakers years and years ago, they didn't worry about people being able to pause, because you didn't have like VCRs commonly yet or things like that. And it's like, it's not that they didn't care about the film that they made. It's not that they weren't invested. It's just that, and it's not even that like they didn't know, say we'll bring Star Wars back into it. It's not like you didn't know that Empire Strikes Back and Jedi were coming out into popularity, right? But it's just, you don't think about these things when these things don't exist yet. Like a passionate, deeply invested fan culture just, I don't think, felt big. Like, sure, they had commercial success, but like that's different from feeling like people are going to deeply read your work. And it doesn't mean they didn't care about it. I don't think have I ever accused them of not caring? I think I've only accused them of not being good at it. I don't think I've accused them of not caring. I mean, it is.
Yeah, by and large, I guess I think that's true. I mean, you did.
I probably had moments.
The fall. You did say some things about the fall that I think I disagree with. Where you said that they failed to explain the fall because they didn't bother to think up an explanation.
Well, yeah. I mean, I think the thing is,
I have a somewhat different. I'm more inclined to think that there is an explanation and it got edited out.
I think that I put less weight on editing because so much stuff was left in that editors should have fixed or taken out. Like literal wrong sentence structures and misspellings and things and missing punctuation are still in there.
Yeah.
So I guess I'm not really... It really felt like the editor was drinking on the job, and I honestly don't blame them. They had to read the manuscript. I feel bad. Once again, Brian DeFiore, editor of Book of Atris, pour one out for the man to read that raw manuscript of that. We don't know who edited the other two. They don't say, but he was acknowledged in the first book.
Because we do know from Rand's recent comments, or semi-recent, they're about 3 years old now or so, right, that they were forced. He didn't clarify by whom. It seemed like probably the publisher.
Publisher, probably am.
Yeah, they were forced to remove something.
Yeah, I mean, it's hard to say what it was.
I have a candidate. I have a candidate in mind, but we'll get there when we get there.
Okay.
Yeah.
So I think, I mean, there's going to be more of that where it's like they bring something up and don't go into it as much as I feel like they ought to. I fully expect that to not change. That's just their style. And whether that's editor influenced or just the way they are. Because I think the thing is, when I say that they didn't think it up ahead of time, it's not... I probably think about that differently than it sounds to other people. I'm realizing a lot these days that that's true of a lot of things that I say, where it's like, to me, it seems normal, and other people are like, why did you just say this horrible thing? And I'm like, because that's how my brain works. Like, it just seems like a thing that happens. Like, you as you're creating something, you have this idea in your head, and it's not necessarily where you've thought out all of the specific plot points or whatever, but you have a feeling of it, right? So then when you're trying to express it verbally, whether that's on paper or speaking, the translation between I feel like the fall feels like this to let me describe all of the things that happened, sometimes that doesn't work out so great, because like when you're reading it, you know what you feel about it. And so like in your mind, there are some other details in there, but they might be kind of vague background things. Like you're sort of feeling like there was social unrest or whatever. And I know I'm just using this as an example. Like I'm not saying that this is what happened with this specific incident. It's just an example. But like you're feeling like this stuff existed there, but it just doesn't make it to the page. But you don't notice, because when you're reading it, your brain is adding the other thing, the additional context that you have that you didn't express, but you don't even notice that you didn't express it. Like it's not, and that's not, I mean, it's bad from a reader's perspective because you didn't get the context that made it make sense, right? But it's not like, it's something that, say, an editor should point out that this lacks something, right? Like it's the author, something fell down in the process of writing these, clearly. Where it was, there's some breakdown between, writing it, editing it, getting everything together, where there is a lot that did not get, I think, expressed fully or completely. And then a whole bunch of stuff where I'm sure all of this stuff in Tiana that, God, was really boring, that there was some sort of additional emotional context to them that made it reasonable to have in there. That I'm looking at it, I'm like, okay, cut all of this section and give me something more about the stuff that's important to the story, right? But I'm sure it made sense to them somehow. It just doesn't feel like it belongs there from the outside. But when they read it, it probably read differently to them. So because that's something that my brain does a lot, where like I'm feeling, and I think everybody does, but it's maybe to different degrees. And I think it depends on how much you perceive the world by feeling it and feeling a sense of it. Like, because, with my face blindness, like that's how I perceive a person. I have a feel of a person. When I think of somebody that I know, I'm not thinking of what they look like. I'm thinking of like the feel of the person, but how would I put that into words? How could I describe to you like who this person is completely in a way that you will understand? Because it won't probably seem like a description of a person that's identifiable. Like if I tried to describe to you like what my best friend is like, right? Because I'm not going to be using physical features probably. And I might not describe specific things like they were, like I would probably say, because I know it's normal to say like what a person's job is and where they live and how I know them and that kind of stuff. I know that's normal to say, but that's not necessarily how I consider the person. And I don't know how much that is true for other people. But that's kind of how I experience a lot of the world, I think. So I really understand this being a problem. It does not make the reading experience better. But it's not a problem that I think is like it can make you a bad author, but it doesn't make them bad people. It doesn't make their intentions bad necessarily, but it doesn't change the fact that some things don't get expressed to the reader. So I think I think I can be upset and be critical of how a piece of art, we'll call it that. I mean, it's the kind you would put on the refrigerator because your child drew it. I can obviously be critical of it, but still understand how it potentially got to where it is, and be understanding of how that could still come from good intentions. Like they didn't intend for this to not make sense, or they didn't intend to leave out the interesting parts. It's just that what they saw was different from what I'm seeing. But I can only go on what they gave me, unfortunately. So I feel like sometimes sometimes my criticism may sound harsher to other people than I mean it to be. I think this is not to say that I have not harshly criticized parts of this, because that is also true. But I am saying there are situations where it didn't feel harsh to me, but I think it probably sounded that way in retrospect. This is a thing I am learning by streaming and talking to people. is that my brain clearly does not work like other people's do.
Well,
Which I already kind of knew, but it, you know.
That's why the audience is there, so that if you're being too harsh, then the public will comment.
And I mean, I also acknowledge that things like having an issue with the biology of them all being able to reproduce together, that's a me problem. I get that. I get that it's not a book problem, really. I feel like it is / should be, because if I were world building, I would address that.
Well,
but
yeah,
you know,
on that particular issue, you know, my position is it's not good, but it would be preferable to have not had that. But it is such a ubiquitous science fiction.
Oh, I know. Yeah, that's why I'm saying it's a me problem.
That it kind of it just kind of accepted for
yeah.
But yeah,
I mean, I get it. It's a trope. I get it. It's a thing that just happens in a lot. Like Spock shouldn't exist. I mean, like, that's obvious.
Right.
I get that, you know. But and it's hilarious when they try to address in the original series how he's there, because that even makes it worse. But it, you know, I mean, I get that it's a me problem. That doesn't mean I'm not going to complain about it. And that's just going to be true of reviewing all of it. It's just that, like, you know, I can get that something is not a thing that is objectively to other people a problem. Little things that I just can't let go. Like, I get it. You know, I feel like other criticisms are, you know, I mean, I don't feel like that critique is necessarily invalid. It's just that, like, I make it, but also understand that it's a me problem. You know, like, I feel like it's valid to say they do sort of bring it up and then never really do anything about it. And that's not great, but I feel like that's valid. But the fact that it bothers me so much. Maybe one other thing that we should clarify here before we wrap up is our stance on a couple of other things. Since you and I differ greatly on a couple of things, not just that all of the races are races and not species. That is not the only break in canon that we have between us. Our biggest one is creation versus linking. We are on the opposite sides of that debate. This is when it comes to the Denis art, the writing the books. Because this is not a view that I have of how one would say this outside of the context of Myst, but I believe in the creationism of the Denis art, and I believe that it is more supported by the text than the alternative. But Everett holds the opposite belief.
Well, I guess what I'd say is there's I don't even know if it's my position. It's just that's what the story says, is that.
But that's where we do disagree. That's where we disagree, because it's a show and tell difference to me. And this, I think, again, speaks to how my brain works more than anything else. Because, yes, they explicitly tell you in words, occasionally, that it is not creating an age. It is linking to somewhere that already exists. They do say that with words. But the problem is, to me, that is what characters verbally say, but that the writing about it, and indeed other things that characters do say, is like subconscious indicators that the actual belief here of the authors is creation, and that they just didn't want it to be. So they pay lip service to the idea that it's linking, It's sort of like the difference between what a person says and what their body language says. I'm reading the body language. The body language of this book says that it's creating. The text, the words they are saying, are indeed, I don't disagree that the words that they mostly say, not entirely, but that they mostly say, are linking based. But I don't feel like it makes as much sense, and I don't feel like it's what they actually believe deep down inside, because there's an awful lot of creation language around it that are not things that the Denis verbalize, but are the way that the authors describe it. So I feel like, and I know I've highlighted some of that in the past, I don't expect that to change either. I expect in this upcoming book that they continue to say that it is linking and write that it is creating.
So for anyone who's not familiar with my understanding of this, again, to me, it's just a matter of we're told that it's not creation, and so it isn't. Although there is some, it is true that there are a smattering of behaviors and I'm not talking about Gen, who's the one person who's explicitly wrong about this.
Right.
And having now gone through the book of Tiana again.
Right, but
but
that is the one point where Gen and I agree.
Having gone through Tiana again with you, I think that I'm more inclined to see it sort of a core characterization of Gen is that he's just wrong.
Here's how I see it.
Wrong.
And I'm going to probably pronounce the vowels in your name incorrectly, so I apologize ahead of time, but Vesity says, yes, it doesn't feel consistent. Like when they write the prison books, it clearly describes creation. Thank you. But here's the thing about Gen that I'm reading too much into this. I'm going to preface it by saying, yeah, I'm adding extra stuff probably that, I don't know. It's maybe what I would write, but here we go. I can't kind of help it sometimes that I'm just trying to fix it mentally. But I feel like it would make sense that, first of all, he's going to have incomplete and incorrect understandings of the art because he didn't learn it properly. But then that when he does get the idea, possibly from reading the inferred language of how, Denis texts maybe write about the art, the way that I have inferred that it is more creation writing than it is writing as though they mean that it should be linking. So he may have inferred the same thing. I feel like Gen's story in that situation is actually kind of more interesting because he has gotten this idea that it's creation, which has made him feel like a god, which is why I think this is sort of like when everybody rewrites Phantom Menace. We're just going to be doing Star Wars analogies today, but at least we're taking a break from Five Nights at Freddy's analogies, so there you go. Count yourselves lucky. Where people are like, yeah, it's all about how the Jedi have too much power because who can go against the Jedi? Yeah, good point. That's not actually in the text, though. But I feel like similarly, it would have been more interesting to explore the idea that the reason that the Denis say to each other that it is not creation, that it is linking, despite all of the subconscious language that says it's creation, is because they know that there is a danger in getting a god complex if you believe that you're creating these worlds. And there is no way to prove that it's not a multiverse situation versus creation, right? Like they can't prove that people who say it's linking are wrong. There's just really no way to test it because you can't perceive the multiverse. So like you can't know whether that world existed already or not for sure. So as long as so I feel like something may have happened way back in Disney history that would be very interesting to learn about, but we never will. Unless I write a fanfic for some crazy reason. But that maybe something happened a long time ago where when they did believe that it was creation, somebody did become again, right? Where they became this power-hungry megalomaniac, right? And so ever since then, they have just put it into doctrine that this is not creation, this is linking, just so that that doesn't happen. They seem like that kind of people, to be honest, which I don't know if that says they did decent world building, because I can make an inference that, like, this seems like something their culture would do. They're pretty repressive, and it seems like they might do that to control things like this. And I know that's not part of the text. I know that's not what they officially did. But
to clarify, you're saying that a generation of the Gunny might have hidden information.
Yeah. So that future generations would not believe.
Future generation.
Yeah. That they would essentially erase the idea that it was creation from history in order to prevent another disaster from happening. Now it didn't, because Viovis didn't believe that it was creation, and he still destroyed. Well, he aided and abetted, and it was really Garrus, let's be real. I mean, Garrus was crazy, but he's crazy smart. Like that, you got to admire it in some sense. That whole plot was genius. It was so genius, they couldn't fully explain to us how Viovis was sprung from prison, or how they got access to any of the things they got access to. They were smarter than the authors who wrote them. But it feels like something that Disney culture would have done. That, like, ancient, early on in the art, that some, dictator sprung up and they decided to prevent it from happening again by just being like, well, let's make it very clear. But you can't quite erase how people feel about it. Like, they're going to feel like they're creating it. So a lot of the language is about creating, because I think it is. But they're going to say, because it's been drilled into them. I mean, think about all the others, like how rigid their society is in general. They have to ask the council to get married and have a unanimous vote. Like, they're rigid.
Yeah. Before we go too much further, I just want to reiterate what I've said before, just so everyone's clear. I do not understand why you care so much about this creation thing. It is it is a core premise of the story. It's fine to contemplate fan fiction that takes away a core premise of the story, but
it makes it better.
Other than that, I respectfully listen to your musings on this topic, but find them remarkably
we're just
irrelevant.
I mean, it's not relevant to the plot. It's relevant to the world building. I mean, that's is much like it is kind of a me problem, but just because it will probably come up at some point.
Sorry, to answer that one point on the in the chat, which I had to sort of switch my location here, so I've lost seeing the chat. But the prison ages are created because they're not ages, right? They're these sort of mid-link zones that exist, but you have to create the dynamic within which someone is caught there. So that's you're not creating. It's created in the sense that you are converting a reality into a function that is for your purposes, and then you deposit the person into this mid-link zone. So I'm fine with saying that is a creative act, and I don't think that's inconsistent with the art.
I've got a tiny concession to creation.
Oh, okay.
I know you don't fight.
Celebrate at length about that.
Well, I don't really need to because I know it's not a full concession. But I don't really know what's going to be in this book fundamentally. But I expect that it will be written similarly to the previous ones, so I will be struggling through it to some extent. And I also expect Vestity doesn't necessarily agree. But it will flesh something out. I don't know what, though. That is the question. I don't know what part of how much information we're going to get about things that are directly in Myst 3. I mean, I think it's going to fill in some. Certainly, there's like a huge area of time that we don't get to see, right? Because Saavedra is his whole beef is from years and years, right? So it's not like it's 30 years. Like you have this 30-year span where just
20 years.
20 years? Was it 20 years? I thought it was 30. I can never remember.
Long years, Acre.
It was a long time, regardless. And so he's focused mostly on the time at the beginning of that, before that, the stuff that caused that to be, not anything in that intervening time. So, there's a whole field in which they could be playing of just time span. Where they will focus it and how many time jumps there will be. Because the time jumps throw off any ability to predict where this is going to be because they're so fond of it. Where they're just like, 30 years later, that was my favorite one in Book of Tiana, like at the beginning where they just drop it casually. They're like, yeah, 30 years ago, this thing happened that you just read in the previous part and you thought it was the same time. And then they just move on like it's nothing. And I'm like, wait, I had to read it like 3 times before I understood that legitimately 30 years had passed. Because you don't just drop a time skip like that. That was so wild. I almost admire it, but also it was annoying. So because they're so fond of these time skips, I'm thinking I can't bet on it being during that time frame. I mean, we could skip way ahead to we could do a little bit in this time frame and then skip way ahead to after Myst 4 for all I know. They don't feel bound by a timeline very much. So
you're open to the possibility that Myst 3 and maybe even other things will be concurrent with this. So.
Yeah, I'm open to that. Yeah, because well, I mean, think about it. Myst 3 particularly, because how involved is Atris in that? Not. He's just not. 30 years into Any Time is a Week, but how old is Anna by Atris's book? Anna in Book of Atris is I don't remember. She was, I think, what did we say? We did determine she was 40 something, I think, when Gen was a child. If I remember correctly.
Oh, Anna's age?
Yeah, chat is curious how old she was by Book of Atris. Yeah, I want to say that she would have been probably in her 60s in Book of Atris, or at least, when he was a young child. But that's based purely on a vague memory of us doing a rough calculation of how old she probably was. Because I don't really remember. She would have been old by the time period standards, for sure.
Yeah, I don't want to say anything because
I do the math, and I honestly don't remember, but I do remember that we came up with 40s for some time during Book of Tiana, and I don't remember if that was after Gen was born or before, but we had kind of worked out roughly, and it was very rough. I mean, understand, Vestity, that we didn't. There is no way, I don't think, to precisely calculate her age. You can only kind of guesstimate based on, they say a few years here, a year there, and you kind of have to guess what's a few years? Is a few years 3? Is a few years 10? I don't know what it is to you. See, we kind of guesstimated. I would say that I vaguely remember that she's probably in her late 50s, early 60s when Atris is born, but I don't know that. I don't.
Well, yeah. Well, because we know she's 18 when she discovers
right when she stumbles into
and,
Denis, yeah.
And then we know there's about 19 years to Atris's birth. From Gen's birth.
From Gen's birth, yeah, because he was 19.
Yeah, and then there's a period that's fairly large between their marriage and birth.
He says it feels like Lagertha and Vikings.
I can go back and look at the map, but
yeah. I know we calculated. I just don't remember what it was for sure. Vesey says feels like Lagertha and Vikings TV show. Still being 40 after like 6 time skips. I don't like it. Yeah, I mean it's hard. The thing is, some of the time skips, it's hard to say how long they were because they don't specify, but some of them they do. Like the 30-year one, they specifically say 30 years. But there are some time skips in Tiana where they just say a few years. It's been a few years since XYZ, and you kind of have to just guess what's a few. So it's always going to be a little wibbly wobbly on that. But we do know that Gen was 19 years old when Atris was born, and I feel like that's babies having babies. I'm just saying, even though at the time, if we're talking 1800s, he was probably an old man.
Having babies. Yeah, of course that is what it is. Yeah.
Especially for his society, like he'd be an infant child at 19 for a Denis person. Like they live forever, so it'd be ridiculous. But yeah, so yeah, ultimately I don't know how to answer that question for sure. But I know we did it at one point. I just don't remember when and what it was, what our conclusion was at the end.
Before we conclude, I did want to go over, and there's other things we can bring up in later sessions, but. So we did a little game before where I asked you to guess 5 characters or categories of characters.
Okay.
Who would be in the book?
Yeah.
And I just want to go over. Right, because you said. I just want to see if you're still sticking with this, but probably not Savidro.
Probably not. I'll stand by that.
Because
that would be too interesting.
A yes for Yisha.
Yeah, potentially at the end. I mean, it depends on how many time skips. I won't say I would not say that she would be on the tippy top of my list at this point, but I would say her birth appearing is certainly a possibility. It is absolutely a possibility that I'm open to. I think we may see the note that she is born.
Okay. Probably not on some combination of Emmett, Branch, or Will.
I do not think that they would be in it.
Probably not for Swerner, or Swernier, as you've pronounced it.
Yeah, I mean, that's how I would pronounce it, but that, who knows? I doubt it, because I don't think we're ever going to get closure on what happened to Tim.
Yeah.
I don't think we're going to know.
And probably not for Cho.
Yeah, I doubt it. I don't think Riven's coming into this at all. So anything that's like associated with that, I don't think we're going to see anything. I think that's a closed chapter at that point, and we're done with it. I could be wrong. Okay. I know I could be wrong, but I do pretty much stand by that, except that I think I would lower the probability that Yisha shows up at all, but I do still think her being born might be mentioned at some point. Excuse me, one second.
Okay. Here's phase 2 of the game, which I prepared, which you do not need to play if you feel uncomfortable.
All right,
but
hit me.
This is now 5 more.
Okay.
From what doesn't exist.
Okay.
And again, you don't have to play if you don't want to.
All right.
But here they are.
Okay.
Number 1, Asher. Number 2, members of the Guild of Maintainers from their office in Garrison.
Okay.
Number 3, Kadish. Number 4, the Barrow. And number 5, Mario.
That's a very good question. Given the fact that cries for the Book of Marm have been frequent in my chat, I'm guessing that there's just enough of a mention to make you want more. Because clearly there is a desire for more. So based purely on the reaction of you and a couple of other people to Please Book of Marm, I'm going to say appears but barely. Like the suggestion of something interesting drifting by as the plot goes around, and we don't get more than that. That's going to be my guess on that.
Okay.
Guild of Maintainers. You were very specific about that, though. That makes me suspicious.
Yeah, specifically the maintainers on Gurisa.
See, that makes me feel like I want to say no just because you were so specific about it, and I feel like I'm going to get caught where it's going to be like the Guild of Maintainers shows up but not there. Like that feels like one of those things to me. So that feels like a trap, but I am going to say yes. I'm going to be brave. I'm going to say yes to them.
Okay.
Other ones I'm going to say I probably don't know enough to make a judgment.
Okay.
But those two, I feel like yes, but for Marm, it's going to be hardly at all. It's going to be like, something's interesting is happening, so that's why you want the book. Clearly, there wasn't enough development, so, but yet y'all know more than I do. So it's got to be in there somewhere. Like, it can't be a no. So I feel like I could be wrong.
Okay.
Like that's the thing. I mean, we're making predictions. Like I'm not psychic and I haven't read it yet, so I could be wrong about any of it. But yeah, the other ones I don't feel like I have quite enough context for. But the Barrow, I'm gonna say no on that. But
okay.
Again, it's so hard to like knowing the time skip thing they love to do. And the way that they freely switch POV when they feel like it, it makes it very hard to feel any degree of certainty about what they'll show, because it's like they might just switch to somebody else for a chapter and who knows why. You might get a 40-year time skip and go to a completely different age, and that's totally cool with them. It's a very stream of consciousness form of plotting things out, and that makes it challenging to predict. Like, I never would have predicted how the fall of Denis actually happened. Like, first of all, I honestly, I don't have that devious of a criminal mind. I'll just say it. I can be devious sometimes, but I'm not that devious. That was very. But, so there are things like that where I can predict. I also never would have predicted that it happens in, like, the last 20th of the book, and that's being generous to how much time they give it. I feel I would have predicted it would have happened somewhere in the middle, so I would have been very wrong. I thought we were going to see more Gen in that one, but we didn't. So they've smashed my anticipation pretty much completely before. So I would say that my degree of certainty on any answer I've given is lower than it used to be, but I do stand by the ones that I said before, and I just don't know enough about some of the ones in your second round. So
okay.
I did my best.
All right, those are good guesses. And then one other game.
Okay.
Which I asked you about before, and you were reluctant to do, and it's fine if you're reluctant to do again. But
we'll see.
If you were writing a spoof of Atris II.
Oh God.
Story. What are five things that he would do in it?
He's so hard to spoof. That's the problem. Like, how do you spoof somebody who's so disconnected from the world around him? Like, I guess you would have to go kind of Walter Mitty on it. where it's just like he's really in his own world all the time. Because how do you exaggerate? Like a spoof exaggerates whatever the funny or weird traits of something is, right? So how do you exaggerate ignoring your children, for example? Like ignoring is the absence of a thing, not the presence of a thing. So that makes it really hard. But I guess it would be like, yeah, you would have to show him like completely ignoring his family, because that is a core characteristic of the man. So it would be like, you know, you would have to have people coming in the room and talking directly to him, and him completely not paying attention. Oh, we have a big chat question. Been meaning to ask, has anyone here played Mystcraft, the mod for Minecraft? I know it's not the same as a proper immersive cyan game, but it did something neat, letting the player write their own ages, hunting down different pages for different environments. I've never even heard of it. I can't speak for anybody in chat, but I've never heard of that.
I have not. I am ignorant of Minecraft.
Yeah, me too. I played like the early.
I was watching some other people play it.
Oh, thanks for dropping by, Vessity. Yeah, we're gonna wrap up here because Everett needs to go. But in terms of like spoofing, it's really hard. It's just hard because like, what do you even exaggerate? Like I said, I think I would have to turn him into kind of a Walter Mitty, but you're seeing it from the outside. You're not seeing the daydreams that he's having. Like you're just seeing from the outside how this guy is like completely disconnected from everything. Because that's, I would say that is kind of like his core character trait, is that he's never malicious. It's just he's not paying any attention to how, like, he's not reading the room. He's incapable of it. I don't know how you would do it without, like, I honestly, like, this is why it's hard, is because, like, how do you do it? How do you spoof that character without it just becoming like a cruel autism stereotype? I don't know how you exaggerate how he is without it becoming uncool at a certain point, which is why I would have to take it to like a daydreaming angle instead, because at least that's more neutral. I feel like it's hard to spoof how he is and what he's done, because again, a lot of it is the absence of awareness, and exaggerating an absence is not easy. I also think I'm probably not particularly good at spoofing things to begin with. I mean, for example, I know a lot of people love Spaceballs. I'm not a fan. I probably take things too seriously to be good at spoofing stuff. Like, that's the thing. I would more easily write a better version of Book of Atris than I could write a spoof of any of it. You know, I don't know what that says about me, but there you go. I could try, but I feel like I would get uncomfortable because it would veer into uncomfortable stereotypes of traits that I relate to a little too much.
Okay.
So, you know, it's like, I get how, that's the thing about him, is like, I get how it happened. Like, I get how he is. I understand. It's just like, maybe don't have kids then. I don't know. That's maybe his worst choice, is to have children in the first place. But I mean, I suppose we don't know what Disney birth control is like, but yeah, I criticize him a lot because he is a bad father, and he did cause a ton of problems, but not meaning to. But I do get him on a basic level, I think. I feel like I get Grandpa Atris better. He's a little more in tune, you know? He's not as extreme as his grandson in terms of like being in his own head. He's still not, like you said, he's not a good whip counter, right? So how he gets up in the council is a little weird, but I think that has more to do with his dad than anything. His dad and Viovis's dad, and just, he knows people, I think, so they kind of overlook how bad he is at reading people, and he is able to adapt. He does get better at it. I feel, as the story goes on. Like, we do see more evidence that he is socially more adept. Not adept, but more adept than he was. So I feel like I get him better. But I certainly do get the basic idea of his grandson. So spoofing it is a challenge. But I don't know. I feel like to some degree I'd be spoofing myself, but I don't know what that would look like, and I don't think I want to.
Well, audience, that's what we got. Some of you didn't know or may know already what was right and what was wrong in there. Others will be discovering along the way.
Yep, I'm going in blind to this. All I've got is the blurb on the back and having played through Myst 4.
So what is the, for those who are reading along, what is what's the homework assignment for?
Yeah, I'm looking at, because again, it's not, they didn't do like nice little chapters like the first one, which was so convenient for breaking things up. I'm literally just flipping, looking for like a chapter heading or something. So like deciding, and then mine is going to be different pages because it's the Myst Reader edition. So this might be a little bit challenging in determining like a stopping point.
Well, we do have.
If I would recommend, if you're looking for a recommendation, shooting for, because we still do have the acknowledgements, which are shorter.
We do have the acknowledgements.
I think you've wanted to focus on those before.
Mostly we do the acknowledgements because we're looking for evidence of semicolon guy. So
yeah,
we're trying to track the absence of semicolon guy.
So in the 97 version, I have the acknowledgements, then the prologue,
right, which is pretty short.
Yeah, and the prologue then has an opening quote,
right,
from the Korok Jima verses 13,245 to 13,246.
46, yeah.
And then we have the body of the prologue. Right. I would say that's probably sufficient.
Okay, yeah, sufficient for how I go into detail. Oh, these poor people who haven't been here before, they don't even know yet. Speaking of predictions, how many pages do you think my notes are going to be this time? Because it's become a novel in its own right every time. It's getting worse. This book is shorter, though.
Yeah, there is some discussion. Yeah, well, should Roger publish a book once this is all over?
The scholarly examination of. I mean, I've written a dissertation's worth at this point on these books. It's ridiculous. I don't know. It's not an accomplishment you want to cite for people, but there you go. Yeah, we'll do the acknowledgements in the prologue, and then that gives us a little bit of space to also cover anything we think about in the meantime that we didn't cover, like as a general series topic.
Okay.
And so that people know we're doing this every other week, so it's not going to be next Monday, but it'll be the one after that.
Yeah. And the other thing, so for this next session, what I'll do, and we can talk about whether I should keep doing this, but I will prepare I'll prepare the text of for this next passage that we're going through. I will prepare a comparison text with to the
new version
2025. Yeah. Read it.
I mean, if there is any difference just in the prologue, I mean, I don't know if they would have touched that, but I guess we'll find out.
Yeah.
I think that would be an interesting thing to do, is to see what they did change and what they didn't.
Yeah, so I'll prepare that, and then what we want to do with that, we can decide later, but
okay. I'll
have that in and back.
Okay. All right. Sounds good. All right, so we're going to wrap up, let Everett get back to having whatever kind of, I hope you're having a good day, but we'll let you get back to your day, and we'll be back here in 2 weeks for another You'll get to see how crazy my dissertations are on these. Experience it for the first time. But thank you for joining us.
Yeah, thank you very much. I really appreciated it. It was a lot of fun.
Yeah, it is a lot of fun. Yeah, we probably should have done this earlier, but we're here now. We're here for the third book. We'll do it. So thanks for coming by, chat, and hope to see you again in 2 weeks when we do another one.